Hello everybody, welcome to this video. Unfortunately, this video, just a little disclaimer here, is going to be a bit dry because what we're going to be talking about are neurotransmitters and neurological disorders. And so this is a lot of memorization. So when you're looking at this table, I want you to look at each disease step by step and look at the location of synthesis of the different neurotransmitters and then try and memorize this. This is something I would recommend doing like a day or two before your exam. Just watch this video and then have this visual picture in your mind so that if you do get asked questions on it, then you'll be able to answer them appropriately. So first, let's go through all of the different diseases that we'll be talking about today. So we'll be talking about anxiety, which is self-explanatory. We'll be talking about depression, which is also self-explanatory. Remember SIG-E caps, the mnemonic to remember all of the symptoms for depression. And then also what we want to do is we want to think about schizophrenia. So remember, for schizophrenia, that's going to be things like flattened affect. It's also going to be things like we're looking for hallucinations, etc., etc. And then for Alzheimer's disease, what we're looking for is memory impairments, right? So memory impairment. And then for Huntington's disease, what we're looking for are personality changes, as well as movement disorders like chorea. And then lastly, we have Parkinson's disease, so we're looking for the trapped mnemonic. So remember the trapped mnemonic: tremor, rigidity, akinesia, and then we're also going to be looking for postural instability. So those are our disorders that we're looking at today. So let's look at some of the neurotransmitters here. So the first one that we'll be looking at is acetylcholine. So with acetylcholine, what we want to remember is that its location of synthesis is in the basal nucleus of Meinhardt. The next one that we have is dopamine. So dopamine is going to be produced in the ventral tegmentum, as well as SNC, which I don't know what that stands for, so we're just going to cross that out and ignore it for now. The next one is GABA, which is going to be produced in the nucleus accumbens. Next one is norepinephrine, which is going to be produced in the locus coeruleus. And then the last one is serotonin, which is going to be produced in the raphe nucleus. So we'll take each disease at a time and then go through it systematically to help you remember which neurotransmitters are associated with which disorder. So when we take a look here, we want to start off with anxiety. So the good thing with anxiety is that we only have to worry about 3 neurotransmitters down here. So these 3 over here. And then so what we have is we have a decrease in GABA. So we want to see that decrease in GABA. We have an increase in norepinephrine. And then we have a decrease in the serotonin levels. So remember that. Decrease in GABA, increase in norepinephrine, and then a decrease in serotonin. So what I want you to remember for this one is GNS, for the neurotransmitters that are affected in anxiety. The next one that we have is depression. And honestly, if you can remember the neurotransmitters that are associated with these disorders, I think you're halfway through the battle. But of course, memorizing which ones are decrease and increase will be important for exam day as well. So the next one is going to be dopamine. And depression. So remember D and D. So dopamine goes down in depression. So D, D, D. Dopamine goes down in depression. And then also remember that norepinephrine goes down in depression as well as serotonin. So how you can remember this is that everything goes down in depression. So if a person is feeling down, all the neurotransmitters are going down that are associated with depression. So that's dopamine, norepinephrine, and serotonin. The next one is going to be schizophrenia. Luckily, there's only one to remember, and it's dopamine. So, of course, you want to remember that dopamine is elevated in schizophrenia, which is why you give antipsychotics. You want to give those antipsychotics in order to treat that depression. So those are dopamine antagonists. So that's why that's how you can remember that schizophrenia is associated with elevated dopamine levels. So next one is Alzheimer's disease, only one to note here as well, and that's going to be acetylcholine, and acetylcholine goes down. So remember that with Alzheimer's disease, memory impairment causes the person's life to go down. So just remember that for Alzheimer's disease, acetylcholine, AA, you can remember it that way, A and A, and then they both go down. Next one is going to be Huntington's disease. This is a little bit more tricky to remember. So acetylcholine is going to be affected, and that's going to be going down. And then dopamine is going to be affected, and that's going to be going up. And then lastly, GABA is affected, and that's going down. Remember that we're affecting the GABAergic neurons, and we're destroying those GABAergic neurons in the brain. So remember, that's the most important one to remember, GABA for Huntington's disease. Remember that high yield, GABA for Huntington's disease. Next one that we have is Parkinson's disease, and this is our final one, thank goodness. So we have an increase in the acetylcholine, a decrease in the dopamine, and then a decrease in the serotonin. So for this one, we have ADS. ADS. Okay? So let's go through this one more time really quickly. So we have all of these different antipsychotics, or not antipsychotics, all these different disorders. So we have acetylcholine. Remember, acetylcholine, dopamine, GABA, norepinephrine, serotonin. And we have our disorders. So we have anxiety, depression, schizophrenia, Alzheimer's disease, Huntington's disease, and then Parkinson's disease. So what you can remember then is that in anxiety, we can remember the mnemonic GNS. So what happens? There's a decrease in GABA, increase in norepinephrine, decrease in serotonin. Depression, everything falls down. So you want to remember dopamine, norepinephrine, and serotonin, everything goes down because the person is feeling down. So if you see anything about neurotransmitters, just associate it with going down in depression and move on to the next question. Next one is schizophrenia, of course, and we are going to see an increase in the dopamine. Remember that because the mechanism of action of the medication that you use is a dopamine antagonist. So remember that dopamine is increased in schizophrenia. And then Alzheimer's, remember AA, and then person's memory is falling down as well, so we want to remember that acetylcholine will go down. Huntington's disease is going to be associated with acetylcholine as well, and acetylcholine will be going down, dopamine will be going up, and then GABA will be going down. Remember, GABA high yield. Parkinson's disease, this is going to be associated with ADS, so acetylcholine goes up, and then dopamine goes down, and serotonin goes down. I hope that helps clarify this information a little bit and helps you get through it because it is a lot. If you have any questions, definitely feel free to leave them in the comments below. I'm happy to answer any questions. All the best. Have a great day. Bye.